Welcome to the Agency X podcast. Today I'm joined by Albert, who is the channel director at Dynamic Yield. His background includes working at various digital agencies, SaaS and tech companies, holding various roles, mostly centered around e-commerce. Currently works, as I mentioned, at Dynamic Yield. And they help brands quickly deliver and test personalized, optimized, and synchronized digital customer interactions.
This episode is sponsored by Gorgias. Gorgias is the #1 e-commerce help desk that lets you manage and respond to messages from your site, social, email, and SMS all in one platform. They have built-in automations to handle common queries like order tracking and save your team time and money. Get a free month by clicking the link in the description and elevate your customer experience today.
You're listening to the Agency X podcast. I'm your host, John Sertikowski, founder and CEO at Avex, a New York City-based e-commerce agency for high-growth D2C brands. As always, I'm joined by our e-commerce strategist, David Anzalone. Our goal is to provide some insight into e-commerce, technology, design, and everything in between. Let us know what you think of today's episode and make sure to visit our website, avexdesigns.com. Today, we're going to discuss how and why e-commerce brands should leverage personalization, A/B testing to improve customer experience. So kind of to kick things off, I'm sure I didn't do you justice with that intro. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're currently doing at DY, and then we'll get into some of the questions we have around personalization.
For sure. Thanks for having me on, John. And it's great to kind of meet you. I know we met on Clubhouse, I think it was, the first time. And we had a chat. But yeah, I'm the channel director here at Dynamic Yield. What that is basically partnerships. So lead all of the partnerships in North America, yourself included. You guys have become one of our best partners very, very quickly, and it's been great to see. So thank you for that. Dynamic Yield, we have also been in the news recently. So if you haven't heard, we were recently acquired by MasterCard. So it's really exciting for us at this time. McDonald's has been a great partner, and we love McDonald's still. They will continue to be a client of ours, but I think MasterCard will be a better fit for us as an organization and for our future growth and long-term plans, etc.
Awesome. Yeah, I was always interested about McDonald's and that acquisition to begin with. MasterCard to me makes sense. It sounds okay. It's financial. There's this, and then it was McDonald's. But then once you explained it, or once I heard why, it made so much sense about personalizations and drive-throughs and leveraging that technology. So it made so much sense. But I'm sure it's going to be a really great merger and acquisition with MasterCard. Looking forward to how that kind of excels things at DY.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because I was working at Cora when McDonald's acquired DY, and Charles, who was the previous partner manager, was a good friend of mine. He told me about it, and the jokes just come to mind, right? You just start thinking burger jokes and all kinds of stuff, and I gave it to him pretty good back then. So now we're looking forward to all the MasterCard jokes that people can throw at us. So far it's been not as bad. So I guess that means the acquisition's better. But that story is like really interesting because like I tell it to people, and a lot of people find it really cool, but some people find it kind of scary as well because they're like, oh my God, they're tracking this stuff about me, or doing these things. And it's like, well, we're not tracking you. Like, we don't know it's you, John Sertikowski, in your car. We just know your car XYZ, right? But
and I mean, we're tracked everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean,
Google,
if you have a phone,
our phones, you have a phone on you. Someone knows you're at McDonald's.
Yeah,
somebody knows. See, but it makes me paranoid sometimes because look, McDonald's is great. But I'm 40 years old. I should not be eating McDonald's regularly. But when my son wants French fries and I have to go through the drive-thru, I'm grabbing a burger. I'm grabbing something because
sure.
It tastes good. So I'm going to eat it. I just don't want anyone to know about it. So
for sure. But I think.
Do you?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say DY knows I've been to how many times I've been to McDonald's. I'm curious to see my profile on that.
I'm curious to see mine too, actually. I was like I didn't think about this until someone asked recently. It's like how I wonder how I do look up someone's purchasing history or what they're into. But I mean, I think it's still a great story that like a fast food chain like McDonald's can be that progressive thinking and leverage a technology like this to optimize their business, right?
Yeah, they've always been pretty innovative when it comes to like either technology or just how they approach their business. Especially if you've ever watched that movie, I think it's The Founder. I think it's called. Yeah, it's about the history of McDonald's, how it started, about the guy who started it, and it's just interesting because they're almost like a real estate company. That's what they kind of talk about in the movie, is that they mainly built their business around being almost a real estate company. They're a brand and they sell burgers, but their business is real estate because they own the land that they build McDonald's on, and they lease it out, and you have to like lease it from to be a franchisee, you have to lease it from McDonald's. So most of their like revenue is from their actual physical real estate. It's pretty interesting. So they've always been a bit different. So after learning more about it, it did make sense of that acquisition. But looking forward to what how it works for MasterCard as well.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, and it speaks to one of the topics I guess we wanted to talk about, which is like the past, the present, and future of personalization, right? So like in the past, personalization was like, welcome John, right, to like a website or an email or something, right? And now it's like it has various definitions depending on who you ask and what their opinion of personalization is, right? So could be product recommendations, right? It could be dynamic content. For us, we view all of those things as personalization, right? We look at like all the interaction points that we can ingest or look at and use that as the basis to drive the experiences that you see, the content that you engage with, the products that you see, so on and so forth. And I think nowadays, like, you've got a lot more sophisticated brands, like a lot of the, top of Shopify Plus have matured a lot more. So they are using tools like ours to, really drive that extra sort of retention or conversion that, when you get to a certain scale, right, like you've really got to play the min-max game, right, which is how do you squeeze more out of like the channels that you have, because you can't keep expanding or growing in certain areas, right?
Yeah, no, of course. And specifically personalization, and kind of starting with that for e-commerce brands, I think our audience would love to know how that actually helps increase conversions. Like, where do they see an ROI with personalization when it comes to on-site on their e-commerce store?
Yeah, I mean, we see this a lot, and I think it's really a challenge for, I think, not the e-com people, but for the people signing the contracts, right? Because the e-com people, I think, can see the value and the ROI of, hey, if I were to increase conversion, right, by X% equals this much dollars, right? But when you hand that off to like your finance person, they don't have the same outlook, I think, or understanding of what this contract means, right? So for us, the way we always view it is like personalization also depends on what your goals are, right? So if you're a brand trying to, increase like your return visitor conversion, right, then you have specific ideas or specific problems that you're trying to solve. And that's great, because when you have a defined problem or use case that you're trying to solve for, that's where you're going to get specific ROI, right? If you don't, where you're just kind of like, hey, broadly, we have a conversion problem. Okay, great. Like, that's great that you acknowledge that, but like, what are the reasons or what are the contributing factors for that problem? And then what are your plans to solve them, right? Because it's not as simple as you buy something like dynamic yield, you plug it in, and then your problems, are solved like a magic black box. It does take some thought, and it does take some planning in terms of like what resources you have, what you're capable of, and what, how complex you want it to be. Right. For some folks, it could be simple as, hey, look, we just want our Facebook ad group people to see Facebook similar content versus, TikTok. Right. and that could net you, a positive gain. But if you wanted to do like, hey, our VIP loyalty members want to see something much more, personalized or catered to them rather than a, anonymous new visitor, right? There's infinite things that you could do. It's a matter of like, which are the ones that are going to impact you the most and get you the most bang for your buck in terms of buying a tool like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll even take it back even a little bit, and it's one of the things you mentioned is like improving conversion rate, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have a conversion rate problem, it's usually bad UX or bad customer experience, and likely brands who are opting in for dynamic yield are interested in it. They've probably solved a lot of those problems already. They probably did a UX audit. They're way past optimizing their store just for user experience and customer experience, and they push that as far as they can. Going with dynamic yield is going to really optimize that customer experience. And if that is a goal, like even putting conversion rate aside, I think an increase in conversion rate is going to be the byproduct of creating a much better customer experience. And that means a tailored, personalized experience when you go to the website. And that holds true even in like a store. If you go into a store and they know who you are and they greet you, they show you what you want, like even leveraging that technology to eventually be in like a restaurant or something like that, or that could be a really great experience, or going into a retail location. But on site, if you're able to see the products that you're interested in, and see the products that are tailored towards you, either based off of who you are or based off of your browsing history, et cetera, your affinity profile, much higher chance of a better customer experience, improved conversions, and just even brand loyalty, like long term, like engaging that. And that was kind of the next question that I had. What can brands do now to optimize customer engagement and drive that long term loyalty, right? So we have a great customer experience, it's personalized. How can we keep that customer, increase retention over time, and drive loyalty?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think the cop-out answer is it depends on your product, right, or your brand, right? But we can take a couple of examples and maybe, elaborate on that. I would say like people who have started to do it really well, in my opinion, are like skincare and hair care products brands. Because you imagine, let's say, 5 to 10 years ago, there wasn't that many options, right? Like you could buy, certain number of shampoos or conditioners or whatever it might be. And nowadays, like with the rise of, things like Shopify and others, like there are tons of brands out there, right? So you have almost an infinite number of choices today, right? And the reasons people buy, I think now, are different than they used to be, right? It used to be either brand loyalty or I just need this shampoo or whatever. But now you've got these factors that weren't available, I think, even 5 years, 10 years ago, which is like sustainable, like, ethically produced, all of these other things that are kind of important to people today. And, you've got a lot of brands pushing those envelopes, like trying to build, sustainable businesses, cleaner businesses, all these kind of things. So understanding and a lot of those brands understand that and lean into that, right? And that's how you kind of, for them, drive the loyalty and the long-term engagement, right? Because you're putting out a product that one meets like the customer's quality standards, but also it's a good product, right? And so in that instance, you don't really have to do a whole lot other than, continually nurture that relationship with them and not, mess up your product line, right? But then when you go to other things, like another example would be a friend of mine used to work at what was called 5-4, right? Which was like a men's shipment, right? Like every month they send you a box of clothes and all that stuff, right? And they had a specific problem as well, which is like at a certain month, subscriptions would drop off dramatically. And they saw this with all customers, right? Like I think it was like between month 8 and 10, they would see like a dramatic drop off. And so the first part is like understanding, like knowing that this is a problem, right? So then how do you fix it? And they actually did use personalization and that's how they kind of started to fix that drop off, right? Because they realized, one, they weren't tracking what people liked in the boxes and disliked. So they added that where you could thumbs up, thumbs down products, as you get them. And then that helps them now drive the ability to say, okay, this person, Albert, doesn't like these types of products, so let's change his box, right? So that in the long term, he gets more things that he likes, right? And so those are sort of like simple, easy examples, I guess. I know it's not always that easy because every e-com brand is, kind of unique in a lot of senses. And it's like, it's interesting because I'm sure you see this too when you work with partners, right? Like Yotpo, Klaviyo, etc. Like the tools are great, but it depends on, what the brand is trying to do, right? Or how much effort they put into it, right? Like Yotpo, you can see like very different like loyalty programs across the spectrum using the same tools. And I think, part of that is one, like I said, the brands struggle a little bit because of like the amount of technology they have to onboard today, the amount of technology they have to maintain, and then also building new things, right? Because it's easy to like kind of plug something in and let it run, but it's another thing to build something completely new on top of that.
Yeah. No, there's a few great things you said there that I'd like to unpack a little bit. One is definitely that the tools are only as powerful as the person who's using them or the team that's using them and what you end up doing with them. They're not there to solve all your problems. Same for sure. Klaviyo, Yotpo, Gorgeous, DY, all of these tools, you have to be able to use them and you have to be able to tailor them to your customers and to your business's needs. That's great. Additionally, on top of that, like loyalty, when it comes to loyalty programs, one thing I see being more and more popular are paid loyalty programs, because you could run like some points and just have a loyalty program, but there's no value there. Yep. More and more brands like REI is doing a really good job with this. They have a paid like membership loyalty program where I think you have to pay like $20 or something, but you end up making that back. It's like their co-op program. Mm-hmm. I love that brand. I buy from them all the time. And becoming a member, you get into all these different things. And I think loyalty is changing and we're going to see a huge shift towards loyalty. So I agree with you there that could be a really powerful tool. To your subscription example, that is a really great example for subscription brands because their primary business is monthly reoccurring revenue, right? Yep. That's how they're not selling individual products, or maybe they are selling individual products, but the bulk of it, 80-90% is probably subscriptions. Yep. So that makes sense for them to really optimize those. And that was a great way to be able to personalize and test that. But looking at like a fashion brand, how does a fashion brand increase loyalty over time when it's not like a reoccurring product, like a skincare brand or something? Yep. And I think that, we have some brands that we worked with, one of them is on DY and they have these really massive product drops. And we were able to implement some functionality. They saw a drastic increase they were already killing it with these product drops, and they saw a huge increase with some of these pop-ups that we enabled, and they're seeing some really great results. And just being able to, once you get to that point, is to slightly optimize or get the edge. And it could have massive results, and it's also going to provide a better customer experience, which leads to that long-term loyalty. So like, it just could be tweaking small little things. And even if it's for just like a product drop or one-time thing or a collaboration between two brands or something that you could utilize as personalization tools and A/B testing tools to be able to just provide a much better customer experience, that leads to that long-term loyalty because you have to stay consistent. And I think that's what it's all about, providing a consistently great customer experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with your point that like loyalty is evolving, right? Because it used to just be get X percent off, buy, certain dollar amount, get a coupon, this type of, sort of stuff. What I'm seeing is like fashion brands, a couple that I've worked with in my past, like they are trying to find ways to derive value out of other non-monetary things. So an example would be in your example, like let's say you have to be part of this club to get access to these exclusive drops, right? And there, you're not really giving them anything like monetarily, but you're allowing them to feel special or to feel, like a VIP or, something different as opposed to somebody who just comes to the website, buys, right? And I think for each brand, that's the challenge, right? Especially in fashion and apparel, which is super competitive. Like, how can you create something that's different for your brand that other brands can't replicate, right? Or if they replicate, will have different results. Some ideas I've seen in the past that were pretty interesting to me were like VIP sort of online shopping sessions, right? For like the top tier folks that fall into that group, where you have like a specialist or a stylist get on with you and your friends. They pull, like a rack of clothes and do that kind of thing. You see Amazon starting to adopt this. I think in China, this has been very common for the past like 5 years. Other things might be like special access to designers, or things that like allow the customer to give feedback on the clothes, right, that they normally would have to do through Yotpo review or email customer service, like this type of stuff, right? And I think you could see all the studies now that like people use money as their sort of vote for brands, and when they do vote for your brand, like they feel like they're entitled to giving you opinions or thoughts, feedback on your product, on your brand, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you find a way to like create that channel for them to do that? Obviously social media is one way, but how do you make them feel like they have a direct access line to somebody at your brand that makes them feel like, hey, I'm special, I'm a VIP of this brand, I've contributed to its like evolution or growth or product lines, etc.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things when it comes to loyalty. I know that there's a platform coming out that is going to be for Shopify that helps brands do paid loyalty. It's interesting. I've seen it and I'm excited about it. So that should probably be coming out really soon to help brands do more like paid loyalty programs. Very different. It's actually can integrate with these other systems that are out there. It's very different from like what Yotpo is doing or what like some of the other loyalty programs that are doing. It really takes it to the next level when it comes to like more like memberships. Two, I love the point you made about having brands be able to, or having customers be able to contribute to what's going on in the brand, the evolution of a brand. There's a skincare brand, I think it's Glossier, who at some point invited or has like this VIP program where customers are on like a Slack channel with members at Glossier, and they're able to give feedback. So I think that's really interesting, and it's a really small way to be able to say, hey, if you want to join this program, whether it's paid or whether it's free, whether you're invited to it, you become a VIP member, you could actually give us feedback. You'll have a direct line of communication with the brand. That's brand loyalty too, and then that's like it's win-win for both sides. So there's a lot of different ways. But you can't start there, right? You have to kind of start somewhere with personalization, with loyalty, with and then you scale to that. So I guess my next question is how can brands scale their personalization programs? When it comes to where do they usually start with? Like, what's the baseline with starting with a platform like Dynamic Yield? What brands are right for it when they first started off? What do they need? And then like where can they go from there, both from a people and a process perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's something that we, here at Dynamic Yield, we usually separate into two kind of buckets. One is like, are you a technology fit? The other one is, are you an organizational fit? Right? The technology fit is usually easy. It's like you're on Shopify, you meet these sort of benchmarks or requirements. Cool, you can use Dynamic Yield. But on the structure of the org side, like we look at this a little bit differently, where do you have an internal champion, right? Do you have somebody that's like dedicated to this? Do you have like a dedicated designer, dedicated developer? Like what is it like your day-to-day look like, Mr. or Mrs. Ecom person, right? Because we want to make sure you're going to be successful, right? We don't want you to sign this contract, onboard this technology, and then it sits on your shelf, and then a year later, everyone's upset, nothing happened, right?
Yeah.
And so, a good example, I think, is Veronica and myself, actually, because like both of us are in this space now and we've done this for a number of years. We've got great experience. But like when we started, like I myself did not go to school for optimization or, personalization. There's no such thing today, right? And I think what it takes generally is one person in your org that questions a lot of things. Like, why do we do it this way? Like, is this the best way we could do that, right? And that's the person that you kind of need to start this, because they're the one that's going to say, hey, we've got this tool now. Like, I always wanted to see what would happen if blank, right? Or how would customers have responded if we did this differently? And now that you have the ability, this person will at least have the drive and determination to be like, hey, we've got a new product drop coming, but I want to test, these two different things against each other. And I think that's where it starts, right? Like it could be simple as content, like messaging, how you're presenting things to your customers, right? And once people get familiar with that and understand like, hey, actually with testing, we've learned a lot of things over the past like quarter, then they take those learnings and then they, implement new things, right? And that's like the core sort of behavior that you kind of want to see. And from there, generally, those people will continue down that path, assuming that they have the bandwidth and the support of the organization to kind of build their own practice inside of that brand. All right. And I think those are the ones that we generally see are most successful. Or if they don't have all these things, like this is why Dynamic Yield works with solutions partners like yourself. Like there are great people out there that can help you, either run your practice or kickstart your practice, teach your people like as they're going, and really help you, get started with, a set of like proven, like campaigns, setups, etc. And then that gets you, a lot quicker down your, maturity curve than trying to just learn it and do it on your own, right?
Yeah. And there's so much that can be done with the platform that you need someone kind of dedicated to it, and you should be at a certain stage. And the way I kind of compare it to a little bit is like SEO, right? SEO is a long game, and even much longer game. There's things with DIY that you could implement like right off the bat and start to see a return on investment, but it's still a longer game of learning, testing, and giving it some time before that ROI is going to come in. With SEO, it's a really long-term game. Like, of course you have to start planning for it, and you have to have someone dedicated to it. And it should be, same thing with customer experience, with search engine optimization, with personalization. It should almost be like across your entire business, on your site, in email, if you have retail locations, even in retail locations, all of those things need to be important, and someone needs to be in charge of each aspect of it. So when we talk about personalization, A/B testing, and DY, we closely aligned it with our GrowthX CRO program.
Yep. And
we kind of vet customers the same way. When we talk to merchants, we'll disqualify them from that program because it might be a waste of money, because they're signing on for a quarter or a year or whatever it may be, and they might not see results right away. They might not have the resources internally, the people in place to be able to dedicate the time to it, and it's just going to be a waste of money. So sometimes we'll advise, hey, maybe we need to shift and just help with some UX things and some development, and let's grow into the program together. And when the time is right, maybe it's 6 months, a year down the road, it makes sense to invest in our GrowthX CRO program and Dynamic Yield, because that together is a much larger investment to be able to grow into it. And then have different tiers within there that they could then grow and expand upon and get, start to optimize every inch of their website and beyond. And that's just going to help them scale over the course of 12, 24, 36 months and beyond.
Totally agree. I mean, in my agency life as well, like I had the same mentality as I think that's, you want to do what's best for your customer, right? Because when you talk about long-term engagement and loyalty, like doing the right thing for the customer is what's going to drive that, right? So the concept is not different, right? The setting maybe is different, but like, it's always about like, what is the best thing? What is the right thing to do, right? Amazon is like a funny kind of thing, because like you talk about paid loyalty, you talk about how do you drive long-term engagement. Like they had done this, a long time ago, right? Like their two things were fast, cheapest, and then best customer service. Like these are the three pillars that they hung their hat on, and they said if we did this, like we'll never lose customers, essentially, right? And everyone has a story where Amazon gave them something for free, where they're just like, just don't send it back, and you're just like, this is insane, right?
Yeah, they do that all the time. And the thing is, with a business like that, you have to make sacrifices if those are going to be your priorities. If you want it cheapest, fastest, and with the best customer experience, where are they sacrificing things? Well, they're sacrificing their employees because they don't have, with their lower level employees, there's a lot of issues there. And sellers, and even other brands. Like look at some brands that they've just gone in and said, oh, this product category looks good. Let's just do something exactly the same and call it Amazon Basics. And then they basically undercut them. So, they've made sacrifices, but from the beginning, they prioritized customer experience being number one and being faster and cheaper than everyone else. So they've carved out a place using those three things to be like, well, sellers have no options. And we're so big that we have so many jobs open that, people are going to work here and people are going to sell through our business. So that's going to take a backseat.
They have the leverage, right? And that's how they operate their business. But I think, you can still use those concepts, right, and apply it to your brand, right? As long as you do it intelligently, meaning, like you may not be able to compete in those exact same things, but like, what are you strong in? What can you compete in, right? What are those things that you can lean into that drive, a unique value for your brand versus another, right? And I think there's a lot more people that are getting more creative with this. And honestly, like oftentimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like you could just go sign up for other people's loyalties and see like what they're offering and what they're giving you, and then figure out which ones work for you and at least piece that together to start with, right? A/B testing, personalization, same thing, right? Like you can go look at some of the other sites. Like a lot of people are getting much better at this today, leveraging like the use of like quizzes, like, hey, like tell me about you. Like what are the things you're looking for? And then we'll, give you a product that's either custom designed for you or, we recommend for you, right? Based on the options that you choose. So, trying to find out like more about your customer and then what is important to them, I think is usually like the first step.
Yeah, that is really important. And I also don't want to miss on like, look, to have loyal customers too, one, you have to have a great product. Two, you have to have a great community. Like that's extremely important. Something that I think is going to be more and more important in the future is developing a community. The more you can't just do a product drop and have a limited run and have millions of people buy your product until you have a community. So, that comes through content, that comes through social media, that comes through just providing great customer service too, and like just building that loyal following so that when you do have that loyalty program and when you do start collecting data, you'll be able to collect as much as possible and you'll be able to actually have people sign up for it. So I think it's important, like kind of just, especially for the younger brands who are starting, who are just getting some traction, focusing on that community. One brand that does it really well is Midday Squares. They make those chocolate bars, healthier chocolate bars. They're delicious. The packaging is great. But like the founders are really great at creating content and community and like looping people in and just like, it feels different. It's like one of those brands that like they got it right when it comes to building community. So if they drop some sort of loyalty program or their subscriptions or whatever they're doing around customer loyalty, I think that they'll see a bigger impact because they started with building that community first. So I think that's really important for sure. For that long-term growth.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to throw another technology tool, like I was speaking to Refersion this week, and we were exploring how would we work with Refersion, and like influencers, affiliates, these are things that most businesses also use today, right? Like to some extent, and optimization of that is something that I don't know if a lot of people are doing, right? It's become kind of like you sign up, you're an affiliate, cool, here's your link, go sell stuff, and we give you some money.
Yeah.
right? The thing that we uncovered was like, hey, dynamic yield could actually personalize for a lot of like some of the, maybe not all of your influencers, but some of the more key ones, right? Like your top performing ones, or the ones that are most like, closely aligned with your brand. If they come to the site, you can actually create one landing page and just personalize that landing page based on the URL they come in, rather than having to build individual pages for each affiliate or each influencer, right? Obviously, if you're talking to like a Kylie Jenner or someone like that, you probably want to build them a custom page. But, there's a lot of folks that are going to drive you a lot of business that most people may not even know or have heard of, but have, huge followings or, influential capabilities to drive your businesses, right? And those folks, you still want to give them a little bit of a personalized feeling of like, hey, I came in via this person. I want to see that person's like Instagram or picture or whatever it is I clicked on. And that helps me show, her products or his products that he recommends, et cetera, et cetera. So little tricks like this, like, can net you, huge gains, right? Like, it just really depends on like where your business model, where your channels are driving, and like which one is your best performing, how your business is run, et cetera, et cetera. I think the ideas and the possibilities definitely are endless with a tool like ours, because you could, test everything on the site essentially, but you really want to hone in on what are the things that are going to be impactful and teach you something, right? Like, not every A/B test is going to be a good one, but hopefully you structured it in a way that you learn something when you finish that test.
Yeah, that's important. And that's also especially about A/B testing and learning things and realizing that not everyone is going to be a success, and it does take some time, that it's not an overnight thing. And that's something that we've had to, there's a learning, like a learning session that we have to have with our clients that we speak to about it. And but once they start to really understand and they do a demo at DY, and we give them a demo of our program and how it's involved, and they realize that like, wow, this is very different, and this is that next level. So, of course we have the merchants who were already doing it, maybe with another platform, or they're aware of it. They have someone who has been talking about personalization and A/B testing. And then there's the other merchants who are like, it's that missing piece for them, where it's going to take them to the next level, where that's the next step, is starting to get there. And those are the types of brands that I feel are growing. So like, when it comes to e-commerce brands, what kind of brands should be looking into it? Like, when's that point where brands should start to be looking at it? Of course, it's not, I'm a D2C brand, I just launched 6 months ago and I haven't broke $1 million for the year, or I'm struggling to just get it off the ground. Obviously, they're not going to invest in this level of personalization now. When is the right time to start looking at DY and start exploring advanced A/B testing, personalization, et cetera?
Yeah, I think my opinion would be when your paid efforts start to hit a wall, where you can't squeeze more ROAS, or you can't squeeze more LTV, whatever it is your metrics are based on. When you start to have struggles there, I think that's a good time to start, rather than dumping more money into that channel. Think about, now, how do I personalize, how do I retain, what are the things that I can do to stay at that budget but increase the conversion or the revenue attributed to that. All right, because oftentimes look, most brands, when you first get started, you got to get traffic, right? Like, that's how you survive, that's how you grow. And most of the times that's paid advertisements of some form, right? Whether that's pay-per-click or Instagram, TikTok, whatever that might be. And that's all great, because you need that. You need to grow your business. You need to get money, all these things. But once that, sort of hits a saturation point or diminishing returns, that's when it's time to start looking at something else, because could you squeeze like a percentage point more? Probably, but how much effort does that take, right? Like, got to shoot all new creative, got to do all these things, right? Like, when it gets to that point where you're having these conversations, I feel like it's a good time to start thinking about, how do we now, we're big enough now that like we've got a sizable amount of revenue and traffic coming. How do we now leverage that and do better with each at bat that we have, rather than try to find more at bats?
Yeah, 100%. Or when Google, Facebook, and Apple release an update, or they have some beef, and it
ruins your
kills
business.
email marketing
Yeah.
and ads and ruins your business. So there could be that. But also, like, we've seen, lots of brands just dump $5, $10, $20, $100,000 a month towards
Sure.
ads, and it's just like that, just dumping tons of money in there, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars.
Yep.
And then, when we're talking about, well, look, you could see a bigger ROI doing this. Sometimes you're right. Like, the money people look at it and go, well, I could see if I spend $10,000 a month, I'm going to make this amount of money.
Right.
But when I see conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, investing in these platforms, it's not that one-to-one comparison. It's like,
Exactly.
it's comparing apples and bowling balls. Like, it's
Right.
not the same. But the return on investment could be much greater. And you're gaining loyal customers who you can then, upsell over time, increase retention. It's different, and it just needs to be part of the stack. Like you said, you need to run your TikTok ads and your Facebook ads and whatever you can in SEO. That still needs to be there. This is that next piece where you might have hit a wall there, or things change, or you're looking to get the edge, you want to grow your business. It's kind of like, this is what has to happen now. But I think there's ways that smaller brands can do A/B testing out of the gate. I think
Sure.
it's smart. There's other tools out there that
Sure.
that are free to do some simple A/B tests, as well as using just Klaviyo for segmentation and personalization, or using some on-site tools. But I think DY is that big next step, and we've seen it with our merchants, and we know when to recommend it and when not to, when it's not the perfect fit.
Definitely.
But it's really when brands are looking to make that jump, and so far we've seen really great results with it in such a short time too, because we only started our CRO program Q2 of like last year.
Yep.
And the partnership has been great so far, and our merchants are seeing tremendous results. So
Yeah.
really
You guys are
really
crushing
happy
it.
that we started to focus on that.
And
Thank you.
To tie it
So
back
are
to
you guys.
to tie it back to Veronica. I mean, she has become really great at this, right? Like, when her and I worked
Yeah.
together, she was a PM, but she she has that mentality of like, why do we do it this way? Like, why can't we do this better? Why can't we, approach this differently? Right. And I think that's the mindset.
Yeah, Veronica, she's our yeah, definitely. That is the mindset. She's our director of client services, and she kind of created that. We had our Growth X CRO program before she started, but it wasn't quite there. It was like it was our managed services with some
Right.
strategy built into it, but it wasn't fully baked. And then she worked with our lead solutions strategist and our lead strategist, and they together kind of like, she like brought a lot of value, really made it her own, and now it is what it is, and it's completely different from a lot of the other programs that we've seen out there, and it's hyper focused, and it's a different mindset. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and I think you guys are doing great things. I still recall our Clubhouse chat, and it was about when I was at agency, how do you structure a program that is more customer friendly, right? Like, because agencies today, it's like, give me some money and we'll do some things, and then maybe stuff will be better after, like maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm super happy to be working with you all. You guys have been doing great. And, we think 2022 is going to be even bigger and better for both of us. And I'm excited, man.
Yeah, same here. And thanks for coming and talking about this today. I think our listeners will find a lot of value, and especially in the personalization side and why to do it. So there's a ton of really great content that we're going to be putting out. We're actually going to have Veronica, our director of client services, talk about CRO. We're going to be doing more podcasts on CRO, and I'd love to have you on again, Albert, to talk about some client successes in the future, because I know that we got some case studies that we're putting out there, and I'm excited to kind of show the world what we've been working on.
I'm open anytime, John. You just let me know.
For sure. Thanks so much, Albert. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
one.
All right.